everyone, welcome back to Beyond the Cowl. Today we are talking about joining our hexagons. So you can see a little bit of my blanket here. It's too big to show you the whole thing on camera, but I will show you some pictures as we move along the video. I have two of the individual hexagons here to show you. These are from our hexagon unit, and they were the very first ones we made. So they were number one, file number one. So in the description box below there is a link to the Facebook group Beyond the Cowl, and in there you can find the files for all of the patterns and things we've done. If you have a job to find it, then just ask away and someone will help you to find the right file. And there is also a link in the description box as well to the playlist for making the hexagons. And the very first one on that playlist, or the first two, covered these two hexagons, the basic granny and the solid granny. So just as you'd make a granny square, this is a granny sort of pattern hexagon with those gaps in between. And then the solid granny where we work into the stitches. Okay, so I did those two and made a whole load of them for this blanket that you can see here. Okay, so if you have made any of the hexagons with us this month, or you've got hexagons that you've made previously from other patterns or anything, then this is going to help you with joining them into something. The principle is basically the same as you would do for a square in sewing and attaching all the sides together. The only thing with the hexagons is that because they're not square, let me grab some squares. These are very tiny little squares here. Because with a square, you can very easily go along and down and then along. You can make strips this way, you can make big long strips, and then you can make strips going this way. You can join them all together. But with hexagons, they don't fit as neatly as that. You don't have a straight side because, as you can see here, some basic geometry, you get a side here, but then it comes down. And so when you have two hexagons like this together, the sides come and make this point. So the next one has to come in here. So you can't just go straight down. So you have to do this funny join. So it takes a little bit more practice and a little bit more thought to be able to put them together. So this video is not exactly going to show you how to put them together. It's more going to show you the idea behind it and some hints and tips on how to do that. So this is going to be a very talky video. If you watched any of my video tutorials in the past, you know that I do tend to talk a little bit. It's nice to feel like we're all crocheting in the same room together and having a chit chat. But it is going to be very talkative today, and less of the actual showing you how to do it, because I can't remember the lady's name off the top of my head, but the lady from Cypress Textiles, who has some awesome designs of hexagons, squares, lots of things. I follow her on Instagram and she has some amazing designs and things. She has a page of tutorials for 4 different designs of joins for hexagons. So the one I've used here, because I've done granny stitches, I've used the granny stitch join. If you can see this here, we've got these little clusters in between, just like the granny, but not as big clusters as the granny, so that it doesn't sort of so that it kind of fits between these two styles. She has 4 designs for joining and using a continuous join, which is what this one is. So I'm not actually making a tutorial to show you exactly how to do it, but I'm going to talk to you about the basic idea behind it, and give you a few hints and tips that I've found from doing that method. So there will be a link in the description to her video for the granny join that I've used. I'll link to her video down there for this granny join, and also I'll give you a link to her web page to see those other designs for joining your hexagons as well. So that's kind of where we are today. So I'm going to show you a series of photos in a moment of how I made this blanket up. Now mine is a hexagon shape. It's a hexagon of hexagons. There's lots of other ways you can do it that make it sort of more squarish, if you like, but this actually is a hexagon shape. So I'm going to pause and pop a photo to show you the finished look of this. Okay, so you can see there how this blanket looks in the hexagon shape. So I have a total of 27, could be 28, I keep forgetting the total, 27 or 28 hexagons on here. So I had to think how I was going to design it, and I could have done, as I did the two patterns, I could do stripes of alternating designs, but as you saw on that photo, I chose to do the outside in the solid, and then the next round I did in the granny, and then I did another round of solid, and then the very center hexagon is the granny. So it's sort of hexagons within hexagons within hexagons, which I rather like the look of. And just a word on colour. I chose these two blues because I thought they went quite nicely together, and then I had to think of a colour to join, so I wanted something to contrast. So I can't remember the exact, I think this one was Capri Blue. The camera isn't showing them a perfect colour, but this is Capri Blue, this was Diva Blue, and the joining is turquoise, even though it's more aqua kind of colour. And they were, this was Happy Sheep yarn. Happy Sheep is really nice to work with. It's nice and soft. So I chose to have these three sort of varying shades of this greeny blue, just to sort of contrast together. You could do them all in one colour, that would be great as well. So what I did was I looked at my hexagon shape, and I worked out how many I needed of each, made those all up, got a pile of those ready, of each of those, and then it was time to attach them together. I sewed all the ends in nice and neatly so that it would be kind of reversible. You don't want to see an ugly back of it, even, you know, you don't really want that. So sew them in as neatly as you can, and then get ready to make your thing. So the great thing about the continuous join is that you have just two ends to sew in. By the time you've made your 27, 28, or if it's bigger like 56 or whatever, by the time you've made all those hexagons and sewn all those ends in, the last thing you probably want to do is sew lots of ends in for making lots of strips and then sewing them all together. So the great thing about continuous join is that you only have your starting tail and your finishing tail. That is it. All of this was done using just one continuous thread, which to me is just fab. I mean, I actually quite like sewing in ends, but it's really nice that when you've done it all, you know you've only got these two, which is great. And because this is a blanket that might get pulled about a lot more, I've purposely left my ends longer than usual so that I can weave them in really, really well and make sure that when it gets washed or pulled about, that it's not gonna come apart. So I like to do that on bigger projects that are going to be used more. I like to have a really, really secure end, so I use a much longer piece. So the way we do this, and I will show you progress photos in a little while, so you can see the actual how it works up. What we do is we do work kind of in strips. So let me see. So let me see if I can bring the camera up a little bit. Okay, so you can't see much more, but you can see a little bit more. So we work it in strips. Okay, so we work from one side to the other. So this one has four hexagons to a side. Okay, so I've got 6 sides of 4. So started in this top corner here, and I did this strip, and then worked, let me just open this, and then worked to this one and up all the way to the top, and then came back down all the way back down, and then started the next strip. Okay, so that's kind of how it works. So I started with 4, and then I had 5 going down, and then I had 6, and then I had 7, which is my biggest row, had 7, and then to finish the other side it went back to 6, and then to 5, and then to 4 for the final side. Okay, so how do we tackle this kind of monster of a project if you've never done anything like this before? And I confess, I had never joined hexagons before. I'd never made hexagons before. I made one, I think. I tried a granny hexagon last year sometime, and that's all I'd ever done before doing the hexagons this month. So the basic principle is we start in this top corner, okay, and we work along and down, down and along, and we leave 2 sides open. Okay, you will see all of this if you watch Cypress Textiles video or look at the Facebook page there. You will see that, and in our file we show you there's a diagram and it shows you lines and the pathway that you follow. Okay, so do have a good look at those. So you do these 4 sides and you leave these 2 open. So you come down here in a C shape, and then we pick up this one and we continue in a C shape, leaving 2 sides open. And what we do as we go along is we put slip stitches in, and that's how we have 2 rows of the granny, but we slip stitch in between. Okay, so we do a C there, and then we bring this next one in and we do a C, and then the 4th one we come down and we do a C, and each time, actually this last one, sorry, we don't, we just do these 3 sides and we leave these ones open. We leave the very outer edge till last. Okay, so we do all of these coming down, 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 and then we stop, and then we bring in our next hexagon. And when you're doing this, you have to think about where it's going to be. Is it going to be higher up or is it going to be lower down? Because of the shape of mine wanting to be a hexagon, I had to bring it down. But just look at your placement, and what I would suggest to you for a tip is whenever you join a new hexagon, you just check, just open the thing out, have a look, because by the time you get further on you won't be able to see it when it's all crumpled on your lap or on the table. But spread it out, have a good look, because I had to undo this or frog many times. I had to do it here, I had to do it over here and over here. So check and double check, and that will help immensely. Okay, so you come down here, and remember we've got this side done here, so this one, so we come up here and we join this, and then we bring another one in, and we kind of come up here and we weave up here this kind of peaks and troughs, which I think Cypress Textiles calls zig and zag, and we come along here and we join these sides and come all the way up there. And then when we finish at the top, we do the top bit. I said I leave the outside, but you do the top. We come along here and we join the next strip, the next row, again in a C shape. So we come round and we do that C shape all over again, round here and round here, because these sides are already joined. So we come round here all the way to the bottom, and then again we stop here, leaving this outside edge free, and then we join our next one and we go up the zig zag peaks and troughs, and we go all the way up to the top, join the next one, and then again we come back down in this kind of C shape like so. Okay, so when you first join these, the next row, it will just be joined on these two sides and it will kind of hang a little. All this will be open, don't panic. And I will show you a photo of how not to do it. When I joined my second row, I joined too many. I didn't insert them into this point here. Here we go. So like this. I didn't do it like this. I did it like I can't remember how I did it, but I basically joined one on every side, and that was wrong. I had too many and they were overlapping, and had to undo it all. So do double check and triple check, unless you're like I'm doing your work a lot and having to redo it all over again. So we'll show you a picture of how not to do it. Okay, so you continue all your rows going zigzag, 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 and then C, 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 C. And you continue like that. And then when you get to your final row over here, this final row here, we've done this, so we do the zig and the zag upwards, and then we finish and we continue. We do that C like we used to, but the beauty of this is that that gives us our outside edge. So this is a beauty in itself, that as well as joining, it gives you an instant border. Yes, you can add to the border, but it gives you an instant border, which is just great. Love it. So you do the C just as you would before, but this time it's giving you your border, which is fab. So you just keep doing your C, 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 and when you come to the bottom, because you've got no more to join to come up here, you're going to come round, and then you're going to do your final route, and you're going to come along here and down, and you're going to finish all these edges that were left. So you're going to come down here, then up and around. Obviously up and down and around depends on what shape you're going for at the end. You come around all these sides that you hadn't done, doing this edge, and then you've got your final side, and you just come up, doing this edge up to the top, join to your first stitch, and fasten off, and you just have two tails. How amazingly awesome is that? You end up with something fabulously joined and with a border. I mean, I'm probably going to put another round of border just to make it a little wider. But how fabulous is that? Works up a treat. So that's the basic principle of how the continuous join goes. You just go round, 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 and then up, 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 round, 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 up, 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 and then a final round and up. Simple. Simple in a way, but it does take a little bit of concentration. I love to crochet while watching TV, unless it's a more complicated pattern, and this one I just had to concentrate on. And yes, I did want to throw it out the door a couple of times, but I decided, look, we're going to do this. So just take your time, make sure you've got lots of tea and coffee, and just keep check what you're doing. The first thing you could do is lay all of your hexagons out. If you've got a particular pattern in mind with different designs, if all of these were the same, would have been much easier for a start, but it's helpful to lay them out in your design and then either put stickers on to number them or pile them up for what you're going to use for the next strip. So after a couple of rows, I had them piled for the strip in the order I was going to use them. It made it much easier. So do just check as you're doing it. Make sure you're joining in the right place and not along the sides and having too many. And that is the basic idea behind this, and I think you will be quite pleased with your result in the end. So that, I think, is probably all I've got to tell you today. The only other thing maybe I'll just give you a little hint on is how I decided to join when they weren't the same amount of stitches. So okay, so I've got these two designs. Now I'm going to move this blanket out of the way a bit so you can actually see what I'm doing rather than having the same colour on top. So let me move that out of the way. Right out of the way actually. Okay, so bring the camera back down. Okay, so I had to decide whether I was going to join in the spaces or in the stitches. And this one also whether I was going to join in the stitches or in between the stitches. Okay, so obviously to keep the consistency of the granny would be to go in the spaces rather than in the stitches. So I had to look at how many I had, and obviously we've got 3 spaces here, 1, 2, 3, and then the corners. Well, a corner's a corner regardless, and this one has a corner and a corner. They measure the same, by the way. They measure the same, they just have a slightly different stitch count because of how they're made. They have the same amount of rounds, so it's just about how they're made. So I had an odd number to make 3 spaces in the middle on this one. Was a bit tricky to figure out because 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 stitches gives me 8 spaces, so I couldn't even really divide this by 3 very easily. Or I could have done into the end stitch, and then the middle stitch, but then the end ones, having those clusters, would be close to the corners, and then it would bunch and could get a bit tricky. So in the end, after a bit of mathematics, I kind of worked out that what I would do to stop it bunching too much is instead of clusters of 3, I was going to do clusters of 2. Okay, so clusters of 2, so it wouldn't sort of bunch it up too much. And I'm just going to show you what I did, just so we have a little bit of crochet on this video and not just talking. So what I did was I did 2. Now in the corners you will find from Cypress Textiles for this particular design, this is the granny join and not any other, but the continuous join method of doing the C shapes and then the zigzag works for any join you choose, but I just then use the granny stitch. So in the corners what she does is 2 double crochet. Okay, so start with my 2 double crochet. She does 2 double crochet, chain 1, 2 double crochet. So do 2 double crochet in there, and we'll do the rest when we come back around. And then straight over and do 2 in the next, because I haven't got any chains here. I've got no chains in between my clusters, so just go straight in and doing 2 double crochet. Okay, and then 2 in the next space. Oops. And 2 in the next. Okay, and then in the next corner it would be 2 double crochet. Here we are. This is the lovely Happy Chic turquoise yarn, this one. Beautiful colour. And then chain 1 and then 2 double crochet. Okay, like so. And then For this one, what I did was chain one, no, not chain one, undo that corner a little. I can show you how she does it. Okay, so then I'm going to go into this corner here and do 2 double crochet. Okay, so I'm just doing the first part of that corner, and then they'll be back to back. Now, I'm not particularly showing you how to do this join. You will need to watch her video closely. I'm not showing you particularly how to do this, so if you think I didn't show you very well, then that's because you need to go and watch her video and check that link out below. Okay, I'm just showing you how I worked out my mathematics. So I'm then going to slip stitch, and then what I chose to do was skip 2 stitches and come into this space here and do my 2 double crochet, and I'm doing it in the space, well, in between the 2 stitches rather than in the top of a stitch. Okay, and then you'll come back and slip stitch. This is kind of how it works with this particular design. And then what I did was the next cluster of 2, I've skipped 2 stitches, so it's always 2 stitches in between. Go into that space, oops, double crochet, into that space, do a double crochet, and then I go into the space between the next 2 double crochets. So this one I split, so you can see there it is split between, actually let me do the next one and then you'll see it more clearly. So let me do that slip stitch, come back this side, skip 2 stitches and do the 2 double crochet in that space, just like so, and then slip stitch in there, and then you'll be back at your corner to do your 2 double crochet, 1, 2 double crochet. Okay, so let me just pull up this loop and show you. So this is what I have here. So okay, so if we look here in the basic granny, we've got the clusters in all the spaces, a cluster of 2 in all the spaces, just kind of regular. And then in this solid granny, because the stitch count was slightly different, I've skipped 2 and then done a cluster of 2, skipped 2, and then I've done 1, and then I've come into the next space or stitch between stitches and done 1. So I've still got 2 and there's still 2 stitches in between, but they're done separately. Okay, and then I've skipped 2 and done 2 more. So it looks, at a quick glance, these 2 that are opposite, they look almost the same, but they're just slightly different. This one has got a stitch in between it, so it's as close as it can be with making the stitch count work. Okay, so you might have to do a little bit of mathematics on that, but if you get stuck, then just leave a comment below. Yeah, leave a comment below, or in the Facebook group, leave a comment there, and just ask if you need help to work out any of that. Then ask away. I mean, ideally would be that all your hexagons had exactly the same stitch count or exactly the same pattern, and there'd be no problem whatsoever. But that rarely happens unless they are all the exact same square or hexagon even. So if you need help working that out, then do shout in the comments or in the Facebook group. Not a problem at all. We're always willing to help you with that. So that's excuse me, that's kind of how it works up for this. So you have 2 rows of granny sort of meeting, the tops meeting back to back, sort of here and here, which gives a really, really nice effect, and it makes your project slightly wider and bigger, which is sometimes quite helpful. So that is the basic idea. That's how they're going to get joined, and it's just really simple. Once you get into the swing of it, it's nice and simple. You just have to check what you're doing, make sure you've got everything in the right place, and especially if your hexagons have a particular design, if they have a right way up or a wrong way up, then you'll need to check that as well. So that is pretty much all I've got to say today. made sure we got a tiny bit of crochet in today in this video. But that is how you can join your hexagons in a continuous join to save sewing in hundreds of ends, and how to have a lovely join. And I personally love this join. I think it fits really nicely with these two patterns and having these 3 colourways. So it's now over to you to make your projects up, and I would love to see what you've made, how you've done them, what join you've used, and whether you use the continuous join or not. Would be great to see. And even just a very long strip of hexagons with this join going all the way around and all the way up. Just one strip would make a really great scarf actually. Would make a change from a square scarf, rectangular scarf. So anyway, I'm going to stop waffling there. Hopefully all this information has helped you. Go have a look at Cypress Textiles, have a look at the file in the group, and have a go. And don't be afraid of needing to undo, redo, make mistakes, and then correct them and continue. I made lots of mistakes and had to undo, probably more than I've ever done on a project. So never fear, we all make mistakes, but just take a deep breath, make another cup of coffee, and continue. So that's it for today. I'm going to pop the blanket back up. I'm going to show you a picture of the whole thing again, and over to you. So until next time, just keep hooking and don't let your tea get cold.